So if I can ask Rany and David and Joonas to join me on stage, and gentlemen, take your seats wherever you like. We have 4 seats, but I'm going to stand up because if I sit down, I'll just fidget. Yeah, so really, David, we got an introduction from you on the video. So I'm maybe going to just go to Joonas. If you can give us a brief introduction where you are now and a little bit of your background in the airline sector.
Of course. Yeah, first of all, it's been super exciting first half of the year. I did a bit of a round-the-world trip with the family, now back in business. Started in a new role as a head of products and retail development at Finnair just a month ago, and just a few days after that, we created our first native order on our website. So it's been kind of quite a roller coaster, but it's been a very exciting one. And my background is in digital, so I've been with Finnair for 8 years. Before that, in a couple of travel agencies, and yeah, maybe that's in short.
So you've seen both sides of
I've seen both sides,
industry,
yeah, and I've enjoyed both sides.
Okay.
It's been very exciting.
Yeah. And Rany, if you want to give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. So I started 2000, so it has been 25 years in the industry as a corporate manager trainee with Air France, where we go through multiple activities of everything and core businesses. Cargos, SkyTeam alliances. I was seconded to Boeing for 3 years for the 747 back then. Back work on the running the terminals to A and to B because we have to go through the social union management. And then I work on the due diligence for the acquisition of KLM, 70 MV manager program for the packages. So we have also the first robot outside that equipped Schiphol Airport for the loading of the luggages, plus all the RFID ships. And back then, in charge of pushing the digital for Air France KLM back then as a global director for the e-service, what you call back then. So it was the first mobile check-in on the BlackBerries, so we didn't have the phones back then. China Investment Fund, private equities, setting up airlines in South Africa, Southeast Asia, Africa. Vice President for Sabre, Corporate Development, launched the first corporate venture capital back then, and VP Pros, and now setting up some airlines across the globe.
We'll come back to the setting up some airlines challenge is an interesting one that we want to hear about. So all 3 of you have a long history in airlines, and you've also worked, Joonas agency through to airline, and Rany almost every part of every kind of airline, and David everything from mobile apps through to e-commerce and digital transformation today. So great background. But Joonas, I wanted to go back to you and talk a little bit about native order. Not everybody will have read your press release with Amadeus, but essentially, can you give us in layman's terms what that means to you?
Of course, it's been a very exciting project and a long one, I have to admit. But just a month ago, on the Iris locale of our website, we created the first ever native order. We have the approach where we bridge. We basically create the order, and we bridge and create the PNR in parallel. So we live it 2 worlds. And on the other locales of the website, we do it the other way around. So we actually create the PNR and then in parallel create the order by bridging. So we do have orders now. One of the locales on the website, which is actually the Iris locale, funny enough, is now 100% on the order world. And was that a clap? Yeah. But we're now evaluating the performance, thinking about the strategy, how to roll out the next markets. And of course, it's the foundation. Creating the order is not really customer facing yet. Customer will only see the PNRs. They will only talk about the PNRs for now. But of course, that allows us to think a little bit further. We can try to innovate around the order. What could we bring next, and what is the kind of a next customer facing thing? So how do the customers benefit of our technology? So I think that is the interesting part. But of course, a big milestone for us, big milestone for the industry as well. I think, yeah, super excited.
And are Are your other systems, your in-house systems and your partner systems, are they going to the PNR first or are they going to the order first? What's the single source of truth in the native order world?
So it will be the PNR for quite some time. Of course, we have the plans to move to the order as totally, but for now, everything after the order has been created habits in the old world, and I think that will be the case for quite some time now.
So for quite some time, you're replicating the PNRs, the e-tickets, the EMDs, all of that stuff still needs to exist, both for some of your other older in-house systems and also your partner systems.
We need to serve for the operations, and we need it with the partners. Definitely.
Okay. Well, I think we'll come back to that in a moment. Rany, if I can switch over to you, I wanted to get maybe a quick update on global airlines. You've had some interesting news recently, and Riviera, what your role is in those two startup carriers and where they are right now.
Yeah, so the location is great. So one product at 320 can bridge London to north of India. 321 XLR can bridge Singapore to New York. So when you do the radius, it's great. We don't have an issue to build up. We have the luxury of having a demand which is greater than supply, but difference of where. So the physical aspects we cannot change, but what you can change is tech. And the question is, what kind of airlines would a consumer or a guest or a traveler would like to have? And this is where we come into airlines as a service. Focus on experience. And what does mean an experience? Experience is a lifestyle. Is it an experience? Is it a, like we mentioned with our colleague, is it just a seamless booking flow from to shooting dates and moving on? So this is AIRIVERIA. We are on board. The moment situation is getting better locally. As from global, so global incorporated as a global airlines, but it's global so far because we're an application of the AOC. Everyone is talking about global because people are lost what's global, and it's pity because simply everyone is comparing it to Lufthansa, British Airways. So, and this is a thing where we are stuck in this industry. We're always comparing to something old-fashioned way of doing things, but global is a lifestyle. So global is a brand so far. And I think when you're running a brand like Uber, Amazon, you can run anything in it. And this is beauty of global. So when we're gonna go into a merchandising and we discuss our merchandising, I can plug anything in global and I can plug global in anything and anywhere. And what we have done lately, we have flew some of the roads and we can discuss some tech we have done. It was a proof of concept to see what kind of lifestyle will be on board, what of lifestyle we're gonna have from a tech point of view, if we're gonna come into something innovator. And actually what kind of experience that the passenger would like to have as part of their lifestyle, not as part of just flying from one point to another.
Okay, but I think, all the airlines are a brand, right? We all have a feeling that we associate with an airline.
Well,
But at the moment, it's a little bit more complicated to be an airline than to be a brand, right? It's you have to sell it to investors. You have to raise a lot of money. You have to start flying. It's a lot of work.
I think money in the airlines can be done easily. I mean, probably I will be here provocative on things. But today, if we don't make a lot of money, we still make money this way of flying aircraft. It's simply you have the unions and the pilots, you have the old assets. You have the average of a tier 1 airlines, you have around 86 FTEs, 90 FTEs per aircraft. In the startup, we have 10 to 12. So the moment you start to know your load factor, which is comparable to your CASK, for the CASK in the airlines, which is the cost per available seats per kilometer, and your RASK, the moment you control your CASK, which all the logos they do, they control their cost, then the revenues, the moment you launch it on the number of seats, everything else makes fun. Then it's your decision. And the agreement there as the investors who would like to make money or you would like to build up something that can be bigger. And here it's an appetite of the investor more than the airline.
Yeah, I mean, airline investment has always been a strange thing. You know the joke that if you want to become a millionaire in an airlines, that you start out as a billionaire, right? A lot of airlines, whether they're flag carriers or they're named after a billionaire brand, are vanity projects ultimately for investors, right? So it's a big challenge to sort of say, how do I get rational money into this industry? in terms of getting the money in and they're expecting a return. Yeah.
And this is where we come back to the lifestyle, because I think when you go into a lifestyle, and one of the basic lifestyle we do have, and I think, you know, my colleagues here, they know it and everyone knows it, it's about your loyalty, right? The way the loyalty is making, when you do evaluation of the loyalty program from Lufthansa and Air France and American Airlines and so on, it's worth more money than the airlines itself. It's simply because it's linked to the lifestyle. So, but today we are stuck in this kind of number of points based on number of kilometers, and we're not able to get out of it, not because we are not capable of doing it from the mental way of doing it, but because of the system. So if I listen that we have to wait for PNR to create and get the orders, that we are like this, and when Alvea will be updating. So the moment we're going to be moving to order, there's a new technology saying, oh, order is already an old-fashioned way of doing things, we are moving to something else. And I think this is where we are stuck.
Because that kind of innovation treadmill, you know, you spend 20 years replacing the old monolith with a new monolith, and at the end of 20 years, you've got a new old monolith. Monolith,
And this is what Aldea was about. I mean, we have someone here from previous Aldea's founding members, but we, the only moment that Amadeus took over Sabre, it was when they drew a line saying, now I'm creating a new thing. And what I have heard here on the video, when incrementing of the value added, as long as you do as increment on the value added, you will never innovate. To innovate, you need to value create and capture.
Yeah.
And you have to draw a line. And that's why we have, you know, colleagues like David trying to say, okay, we draw a line, what it could be the next step. And I was mentioning, I was sitting with David upstairs, I said, oh, you have a nice IBE. He said, we don't have an IBE. What was called?
Digital commerce platform.
There you go. What does it mean? Does it mean it's an internet shopping engine? It's not the booking engine. Old-fashioned line or Altea or Sabre Sonic, I mean, IBE in the 1990s, we are booking a ticket.
Yeah.
We're not shopping. We're not merchandising. And this is what I mean
We're
by...
we're not booking P&Rs anymore. We're creating
There
an
you go.
experience of shopping for orders, right? So, like David, actually, I do want to get that point onto you. Not just talking about your own customers, but the industry at large. Do you think airlines are behind where consumers are in terms of their digital experience of a modern brand?
Yeah, it's it's a fun game rating airlines, right, and comparing them with different industries. Maybe my first observation is it's probably useful to compare airlines against like apples for apples. So what I often find is there's this tendency to say, okay, well, digital native companies, neobanks, etc. Look at the amazing things that these guys are doing, like brands like Revolut, etc. They move so fast. They introduce digital services so quickly. Almost too quickly now. You download one of these apps, like I've got Revolut, I've got Monzo. They are so filled full of capabilities, I don't really feel like I need to use them, but they are constantly experimenting with new ideas. Sounds great, in theory. But compare those guys with most airlines. Most airlines are not neo airlines. And I don't just mean most airlines are not startups. Most airlines have to deal with a lot of legacy business process and legacy technology. Complex technology. And complexity kills innovation, it kills velocity. So these are the constraints that your neobanks do not have. Now, okay, there are a couple of neo airlines out there. I don't mean startups. I mean airlines who have deliberately taken the choice to start up and also try to be a little bit more innovative with their technology. There are not many of them, though, I've got to say. So I'm looking really optimistically at Riyadh Air to see what they can do with Flyer. So modern OMS. The idea is if they get this thing going, then they will be able to move at scale when it comes to digital innovation. So let's judge them after they start up, after say 12 or 18 months, and compare them with Revolut. There have been other airlines who tried to do the same. Unfortunately, they have not succeeded very well. Fly or Fleur Airlines in Norway, who I think shut down a couple of years ago. Interestingly enough, they started up with the same, or let's say predecessor platform to Flyer, a company called Priebus. Had a really simple and engaging digital experience, but their business model didn't work out, unfortunately. So anyway, I'm going to get back to your question.
Let's comment on this one.
Go on, just jump in.
So just 2 points here. On the digital transformation, we don't transform when you start. So you are digital native. And we can discuss another concept, but we can discuss it. So we don't transform anything. The second point is just for sake of this airline, it started to create the first OMS, pure OMS, which was great. But the COVID hit back then in 2021 and they couldn't raise funds. But I'm sure that if again a restart today, it will be successful for the airline.
There's a lot. It's startups are all about timing, right? And then it's true for tech businesses. It's true for airlines. You know, the same idea can work 2 years later than it did work before.
So this one is about positioning and timing for everything.
Yeah. So I mean, that gets us. I think segues us onto the main topic of the panel. Really, is this digital journey. You're right. A new airline doesn't, if they're born digital, they don't have to transform into digital. But is it only for the big guys? Are you waiting for the giant airlines to do it first so you could copy them? Or are you waiting for the big vendors, the biggest TSS vendor, like being Amadeus, for example, to do it, and you can kind of take what they're giving you? Or can smaller airlines have their own destiny? That's the core question of the panel. So what are your, any of you want to comment on that? Joonas, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can start. Well, we are a medium-sized airline to start with, and we are pretty innovative in this space. We've been spearheading the technology for many years already, not only with the orders, but with the NDC and dynamic pricing and so on. So you don't need to be a giant, maybe summarize. Of course, it helps if you're a giant. If you have massive budgets, you can buy a lot of things. You can maybe a quicker start. You get a better place in the queue with the providers. But I think in general, if you're smaller, if you're medium-sized, it might be actually more agile. You might be a little bit more innovative. You might be learning faster because you have fast processes and so on. So in principle, you don't need to be a giant, but you might need support at some point from the giants to push the industry with you. You need the giants at some point, and of course, then you need to select the technology providers. So are they the giants or are they the smaller ones? That's all. Another question.
Well, I do want to ask you about that. How much of your destiny is tied to what Amadeus with Nevio think their roadmap is? And are you creating, and it's a mean question, are you creating a new monolith to replace the old monolith? Are you a guinea pig for Amadeus Nevio? Or, is there a more modular approach? Can you actually control your roadmap and work with other companies as well?
So we are guinea pig in the sense in many of the initiatives, but it's not the only partner we have. We can, of course, kind of in very kind of airline core stuff, they are very important for us, and I think they will be for quite some time. But in some areas of the customer journey, let's say from marketing perspective, for example, there are other options as well. So we don't need to think everything and innovate everything with them, but we need to be able to plug in our own solutions also along the way.
Rany, Davis, any thoughts on this question?
I was wondering if I should set this one out. I mean, I'm a vendor. I've got a product that helps airlines innovate. I guess a couple of reflections. I think there is a sweet spot, and I don't necessarily agree that the big airlines, the trailblazers, are the ones that will move that quickly. I think there are very few who manage to pull off very large projects, and it takes a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of consulting to do that, and a lot of trial and error. On the other hand, there's probably those smaller airlines who do not have the flexible tech basis with which to do that much. Even if they have a lot of maturity, they are constrained fundamentally. So I think there's a sweet spot there who consist of airlines who have a little bit more flexibility in their technology, and they have the right, I think Surya was talking in the video too, that the right kind of mindset to understand how to go about transforming, because there's a lot of potential things you could be doing, and there are steps to do it in the right way, incrementally.
I mean, generally the rule in tech, especially tech startups, is a few people can go very fast, but a lot of people will go slow, right? The problem, I guess, with the airlines is you do have the few people advantage if you're a startup airline or you're a smaller airline, but you're often shackled to a technology that is a massive entity that actually moves quite slow. I do want to open up the audience questions. We have a roving mic. If anyone either has a view on this topic or would ask to ask our panel any questions, just raise your hand now. We have someone up here in the front. State your name and company, sir, and then we'll hear your question.
Okay, I am Burak from Turkish Airlines. My question is, there's I think dilemma to passenger buy the things, but on the other hand, airlines need to get a revenue from ancillary parts So we need to show lots of ancillary products. So what do you think about it? Should airline needs to be simple, or should airline needs to be give lots of products in a distribution channel? What's your point of? Thank you.
Actually, Joonas, can you start?
Yeah, I can start with this one. I think the customer journey is a long one, so you don't need to sell everything at once. Of course, it's good to get the booking in and get the customer committed to fly, and then you can be a little bit more innovative, like how to sell the rest of the products. Of course, some of the products you might want to sell right away, if there's kind of a quota or something. We are with some of the products we are pretty aggressive, I would say. We try to push them the first thing, but then you might want to buy the meal a little bit later. You might want to buy the bag a little bit later, closer to the departure. So you don't need to do everything at once, but you need to do it at some point. I think that's the key. And there are different ways to do it. So it is by email marketing, it is by push notifications. I think you can be innovative with that one, and of course depending on the routes and the customer profile as well. So personalizing the full customer journey, not just pushing everything in the booking flow, because that will kill the conversion, I think, and most of us agree.
If I could take that question and expand the scope of it, it's not just complexity in the product offering and the product catalog. You have complexity that's just native to the mission, right? The mission is deliver 5 billion people safely to tens of thousands of locations around the world. And you have to collaborate with so many companies and at so many systems, at so many silos within the airlines to deliver that mission. But the digital expectation of the consumer is they want easy, right? So how, in your view, how do successful airlines navigate that? Go on, Rany, go on.
I mean, it's a good question, but there's different answers depending on the perspective. But one thing is sure, just to come back on the booking flow and the other things to answer your question, and I think it applies to what Mark is asking. In my opinion, and in the opinion of the teams that we are working to build up this new way of doing things, is actually you have just, when you book, you have to book at three clicks. You remember Uber when it was 3 clicks up. Today, when you go to any booking, and I would say booking, sorry, I'm coming back to my legacy way of saying things, but when you go to any website of any airlines or app, I mean, I will not go to British Airways one because it brings you back to the APIs of the web and back and so.
Oh, the British Airways app that asks you to download the British Airways app.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean,
It's going to get better. So.
That's why it shows that we're still far from getting the basic right, as our colleague mentioned from Romania. In getting the right APIs, but we didn't touch on the IDCs yet, but it's another subject. So my answer to any airline is when you go there, you have 3 clicks to book. You are just going to book, right? If you are going to an inspirational, it has to be something else. If you are going to products, it has to be something else. If you want to get your way of flying in a much nicer way to catch a cab, to catch a black lane or Uber, or get to the airport, dedicated check-in guests, and you have a very great DCS. Now it's mobile, you can check you on the gate itself if need be, getting a wife. So it's a whole flow of a passenger or as a customer to enjoy the whole flow. We can be in a rush, we can be in a business trip, we can be in a family trip, but the whole consistency, and I think this is challenge, besides the safety of, bringing from point A to point B on flying and passengers, is what can you do else and better than it? And this is where the challenge of the current airlines, it's a legacy, it's a lot of flights, it's a lot of passengers. And I think the challenge of transforming, you can transform, but you cannot transform forever. I think at a certain moment you have to draw a line, rethink the whole tech, rethink the whole process, while it's running, and at a certain moment push something else. Again, Altea, I mean, Amadeus is this with Altea 20 years back, they're still running on it, but it's getting to a certain end. I mean, when a tier 1 airline today in 2025 is launching an order on Amadeus, and this is why we are celebrating, I think it's sad because we are discussing this since 15 years ago. I may have not been there. I'm sorry for that, but and this is where, so it's a tough call. But I think we we have, at certain moment, we have to step up on it. And the merchandising in the airline is great. I mean, it's almost, we have a good tools and good good answers to it. So
I'll just come in very quickly. I think it's a great question, really great question. And I kind of disagree with Rany in terms of, the thinking there's an optimal way to do things. So, we should have a 3-step booking flow. It should be 4 steps. We'll do this, we'll do that. The reality is nobody here, every airline in their market and their products are really, really different and constantly changing. I think what works better is if you can move at scale. You can try things out really quickly. You have the way to measure really well what it is you're implementing, and you can react. And you've got the technology to do that. So I was really interested to learn the Ryanair Labs team is now up to 700 people, apparently.
Yes.
So these guys realize the need to be able to technologically move quickly. They do not have a 3-step booking flow. It's actually pretty complicated now, but these guys are constantly experimenting to make sure they're getting the best revenue out of their channel.
Ryanair have probably the best mobile e-commerce experience in the industry. But again, when you're in the Ryanair app, as a consumer, you're in a shopping app. You don't even think of it as an airline, right? And the other thing you can't just design the right flow and then launch it, right? You can't design any application and then assume that design is correct. It's the interactive piece of learning from the market, A/B testing, having the technology that's flexible enough that you can adjust. That's actually what matters, right?
yeah, and that's why I want to come back to what Joonas mentioned at the beginning. Getting the order is very important. Get the order, and then once you click on the order, you have an order number instead of saying PNRs and so on. Moving forward, once you have the number of orders, the ID. So from there, you can explore 360 degrees whatever you like to do with the customer. You want to sell, you want to service. We forget about service. We always discuss about the OSD line. This S for service. We forget about the service. Well, S is for settle. Settle for the tier 1 airlines, but for the new entrance is service.
Okay, so look, we've time for one more question from the audience. If anyone has a question, raise your hand. Or we'll just ask for a closing comment in that case, right? For the small and medium-sized airlines out there, just think about this for a moment. In one sentence, what's their first step? What's the thing they need to do next when they get home from this car fest?
Yeah, start small, but start doing it.
Start. Yeah. David, what do you think?
Figure out what it is you want to measure and optimize, and get the technology in place so that you can measure it. Because otherwise, if you're not measuring whether it's small or big, you're not going to know.
Yeah. Rany?
Know the rules and break them.
All right. Okay, if you all could give a big round of applause for my panel, and thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rany, Joonas, David.
Thank you, and let's give an applause for Mark as well for moderating this session for us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.